Today, we're gonna do something a little bit different, show the behind the scenes of how we make a YouTube video. Now, if you watch this channel, you realize we do some very different styles of video. Sometimes it's more cinematic and in the field, like when we're traveling. And there's also the studio style, where we are in one place here, showing off a product. And that's what I'm gonna be showing you how we do it today. So this is our studio. I've done a full tour of it with Gerald Dundon. He came by, so you can check that out if you want. But this is more about the complete process. All right, so step one is planning. And usually I'm doing this a little bit too last minute, so I'm just sitting here coming up with ideas. Like in this video, I'm actually gonna be writing the notes for what we're gonna do today. Typically, I just do this in my notes app because it means I can write in either my Mac or on an iPad or my phone. It's actually when my iPad gets used the most is in this note-taking process. But I just keep things to a very point form setup, so I know the rough ideas that I need to hit. I don't usually script it completely. Honestly, it's because I'm not a very good writer, so it takes me longer to write it than to say it. While I'm planning a video, by far the most time-consuming part is research. Coming up with an idea, okay, I've usually got a few ideas kicking around of what I want to do next, but finding out the exact details is very challenging, especially with tech, because you can't get the specs wrong, for example. So I'm usually watching a lot of YouTube videos, other people that have done some of the initial research. Usually I like to go straight to the source whenever possible, so I'm getting information from the brand, or best yet, doing the tests myself. Whenever you're buying gear, don't take other people's word for it. So you've got to do this testing to know how things really do work, but it's a lot more time consuming. So those videos can take way longer if we've got to do the tests. Anyway, expect research to be the longest part of the process. All right, once we've got our notes finished, then it's time to start setting up our lighting. All right, so the first thing is setting your key light. So this is usually in the same place. We have this giant softbox with this Forza 500. This is 150 centimeters. It's too big for our space, or honestly anybody's space. That's why we kind of keep it in the same place. Now, after the light is on, we have to kill all of our ambient light that's affecting it. All right, so our big windows have some very beautiful light, especially for photography, it's really great. But for video, it's completely uncontrolled. So that means as I'm talking, sometimes the light would completely change throughout the shot. So we've got to control it as much as possible. I also turn off the fluorescence because they have a different color temperature to all of our good cinema lights. Now, this is the Forza 500, another one, same as what's above, and this is gonna be our ambient light, our fill. If you don't have any light modifiers, like you don't have a big softbox or anything, don't worry. If you have white walls, you're gonna be totally fine. You can also get a white sheet. Still, so often as we've gotten more lighting gear, I still light by just bouncing light around. So I'm using this focusing light to be able to keep spill off the walls, and I'm basically just pointing it up towards the wall and ceiling. And as you watch my YouTube videos, you'll see I change back and forth. Sometimes I like that moodier feeling, and sometimes it's just light and bright. Basically, we change the setup every single time. Next, we're just gonna roughly put everything where it needs to be, all the stands and the booms and the stuff that gets in the way, so that we have a rough shape of the room. Marco helps me out with this. Sometimes he does this while I'm doing all of my notes and preparation. And I wanna give special attention here to the table that I use because I absolutely love it. This is a workbench made by Husky. It was featured in the video I did with Jonathan Morrison a while ago, but I absolutely love it. It's very helpful because it's height adjustable. My dad refinished it, so it's got this nice darker texture to it. On this table is the Canon C70, which is gonna be our camera for today. And this is always one of my favorite parts. We're gonna rig the camera. So this is Wooden Camera's C70 Unified Accessory Kit. It is the Pro Edition, and that's because it comes with the V-Lock battery plate as well as the dovetail plate. We're gonna put it all together. Do you need every piece of this kit to shoot with C70? Absolutely not, but adding rails and some of these accessories does make life easier, especially in the studio. If you only pick up one accessory for your C70, I recommend this Wooden Camera top handle. It can just directly screw into the camera, or you can use the top plate, which securely screws into the top, and then you've got extra mounting points for anything else you want to add after. Since the audio inputs on the C70 are these mini XLRs, you need to either use an adapter cable like this one, or Wooden Camera has this beautiful A box that gives you 2 XLR mini ins. The C70 has great battery life on its own, but by adding a V-mount plate to the back, we're able to power other accessories using the same batteries we're powering the camera with. And you can adjust it so that you can still swing away and open up the viewfinder. By the way, any other C70 owners out there have this loose screen? This happened to almost everybody that has this camera, it seems. and it really bugs me, so now I got to send it for repair. For monitors, we're using the Cine 7 from Small HD. This is the TX model, so it transmits wirelessly to a receiving one, and this is all done via Teradek. It uses their Bolt system, so any of the other Bolt accessories are all compatible. All right, now let's talk about tripods for a second. This is my primary tripod here. This is the Sackler Flowtech 75 with the FSB6 head. You've probably seen other YouTubers talk about it, and the huge advantage is that you can just release these at the top, and you can adjust the height without having to reach all the way to the bottom. It's incredibly handy, and this thing's really well built. The downside of all this is it's very expensive, so if you have a slightly more constrained budget, I would strongly recommend taking a look at this eye footage. It's the Gazelle TC9 legs with the Komodo K7 head, and it is very well built for a very reasonable price. So it's like professional quality, but more people can afford it. It has the legs at the bottom, as most tripods always do, but just all the design is very well thought out, it's very well engineered, and it holds up great. They're both professional quality tripods that are gonna get the job done, and for links to any of this, just be sure to check out the description below so that you can find exactly the products that I'm talking about. Now audio, I love good audio, but as you've heard throughout this video, we are in a very echoey room, so we have to add sound blankets behind the mic and camera to help cut some of that reverb. It's also very important to have a good mic with good mic placement, so we use the Deity S Mic 2. I love this microphone. It's great value for the price. It sounds like a much more expensive microphone, and I boom it overhead and get it as close as I comfortably can while it's still out of frame. My preferred lens for A-roll is the Sigma 24-35 2.0. It's crazy sharp. 2.0 is extremely fast, and that zoom range is usually exactly what I'm looking for when it's just a talking head. So here, let's get that on. All right, that's more like it. So this is it. This is my usual A-roll setup. It might look familiar. And one thing I love to have is a big monitor over here to the side so I can always see what I'm doing. I strongly recommend adding this to your setup if you can. It can be really cheap, doesn't have to be color accurate, but it helps a lot for focus and seeing what's in the background and just seeing what you look like. Sometimes it can be a surprise if you're not monitoring while you shoot. I also usually keep my iPhone hidden just off screen, or sometimes I'm sitting on it just so I can check my notes. I have used teleprompters. Sometimes I do if I write out a full script. But yeah, usually it's just checking my phone throughout. So then I sit here and I talk and we record a video and then we go and edit it. Now the footage has been downloaded. It's usually on an external disk like these SanDisks that I really like, and I keep an AirTag attached to it in case it ever goes missing. And then it's time to start editing. But before we do, a huge thanks to the sponsor of this video, Storyblocks. Because you're watching this, I know you already understand the importance of video in communicating, and it can be so time-consuming to do. There's all the planning, pre-production, and then production and post-production, and all of a sudden your time has gotten away from you and you're struggling to finish the project. Well, no longer. Storyblocks has flexible subscriptions to a massive library of royalty-free 4K footage on virtually any topic that you might be trying to tell a story about. They also have After Effects and Premiere templates, music, images, sound effects, and way more. All the things you need to bring a story to life. You could make something entirely out of Storyblocks. And their unlimited all-access plan means you can just download a bunch of different options, try them out, and see what works best without worrying about it. And Storyblocks is also changing the face of stock footage. They are building up a more diverse and inclusive library to help creators tell their unique and authentic stories. Their Restock program is a commitment to increase representation in stock media. So they're hiring creators from marginalized communities to create content that more reflect the world around us. They can also offer an enterprise license, whatever your video requires. So check them out in the link in the description below. Thanks again to Storyblocks. Now let's edit this video. So I've got all my video imported into the project here. If you didn't already know, I edit in Final Cut Pro. I've done a lot of tutorials about my overall process, so I'm not gonna go completely in depth here. Just give you an overview of how I edit A-roll, which is a large volume of what we're recording here on YouTube. So I'll start off with this segment at the end here. There's two different cameras and it's all one view of me sitting at this desk that I'm sitting at. And when I'm working on A-roll, I'm gonna select all of it and I'm just gonna drag it all into the timeline. And by the way, we're hitting the 1 year point of having Marco help us edit. So having a third-party person to help you with edits allows you to do a lot more. So we've been able to up our production skills because of that help. So often he's doing some of this initial work and I'm doing some of the finishing work, but I'll just show you the process. So we've got a lot of stuff in the timeline here. I could just start editing it, but there's an important step. This is the most important thing I want to show you before we jump into it. I'm going to press Option G and create a new compound clip. It's not even important to title it, so I'm not going to bother. But what this does is put all of our A-roll into one big thing. So you can see it's just like it's one block. Now all of this is treated the same way. And I'll start editing to show you why that's important. Again, these tips have been in other more in-depth videos, but I will use the bracket tools to just trim things off. And I'm actually going to do this visually at first because you're not listening to what I'm saying anyway. I often am just looking at the waveform to kind of know what's going on and just trimming out like big sections of silence and garbage, which is most of what I record. And as I do this, you can see so much of it is visual. I'm skimming past like 10 minutes of recording because I know I don't need it. Then I press Command B and then the left bracket. And that's just how I trim out these big sections. Command B, left bracket, Command B, left bracket. So you can watch this in real time. Look, this isn't sped up at all. Just going through, and this is how you can do like huge amounts of the trimming. And then after you've done this step of just like removing all the junk, that's when you can go back and tighten it all up. So I'm not gonna edit this whole video for you, but this will show you why there's a compound clip. So I've got all of these different sections. They are missing some things though, like it's still filmed in logs, so there's no contrast, and there's still black bars at the top and bottom because it's in DCI, whereas the final video is gonna be in UHD. So I could say select all and change that crop to fill. Now the black bars are taken care of. And then I can go into my color section and select custom LUT, drag it onto the first clip, go into my LUTs and choose from Stalman, C-Log, wait, which one am I using? This is C-Log Cinema Gamut, C-Log 3 Cinema Gamut. And now you can see the contrast is back. It looks like a real image. I'm still gonna have to make some tweaks to this. Like I can see my highlights are too bright and I'm gonna bring up my waveform monitor. I usually preview it with two things up, and one of them is a vector scope and one of them is an RGB overlay waveform. I'll take a glance at the whites of the waveform and even them out to be a little closer to white. Bring back a little bit of saturation, even that out a little more. Anyway, I'm not gonna grade the whole thing. The point is I get it extremely close to what I want it to be in the final product. And then I copy from that clip, select all these other clips that are exactly the same, which is necessary. They have to be the same exposure and everything. And I paste it to those other clips, and now they are all corrected as well. Let's shrink this down. If I go back to my primary timeline, you can see that throughout it, those changes are visible through everything. So I'm gonna further have graded this. This is gonna look different. But the thing is, I can just go inside of it to do the grades, and then I can come back out of it, and it is taken throughout the whole thing. This is so helpful. Another reason it's helpful is if I go in and I select, actually I can select them all at the same time, go to my audio, and I've got multiple audio tracks on each one. There are 4 mono ones, and I can disable everything except what I know is the primary vocal track, and now that is taken care of out here in my main timeline. Now let's crack open another timeline to show you what it looks like when it's finished. This is a photography basics video, so if you're just looking at like how to expose your image, this breaks down aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. And yeah, this is what a more complex grade and edit looks like. There's a lot going on here, just so you can see what it's like. I think it's important to label your music tracks so you can tell what's what. Also, sound effects have their own labels. To do that, you just right click and go to assign audio roles. Other little tips and tricks you can see here. This is Motion VFX that is giving me some different title options in here. And on top of everything, I've got an adjustment layer. Let me turn that on and off. And that is just my film emulation. I think that's all that it is. Yeah, film emulation, small grade. So in my LUTs pack, I only actually have one color adjustment, but I use it on every single video I do. You can see I turned it down to 75% here and then did some small tweaks on top of it. Another thing I'll point out is when you're doing your color adjustments, make sure that you are doing big adjustments. So you can see that's what's happening here. Any of that stuff is happening before your transform LUT, which is bringing it from log to Rec. Zone 09. The corrections have to happen before that. And then you do your final film emulation after all of that. So you can see it's an adjustment layer going over everything. When I'm exporting my videos from Final Cut Pro, it's always been incredibly slow to process a 4K video on YouTube. Like a while ago, it was a full day. So I had uploaded overnight so I could publish in the morning. I noticed a mistake in the morning and I'm like, oh crap. Okay, well, I got to make this quick little change, export, totally fast, no problem. Okay, now upload it to YouTube pretty quick. So I got decent internet. All right, now watch it process. And it took more than 10 hours. And that is infuriating. Like it's so frustrating. So anyway, what was your tip? I'll let you, I won't spoil it for you. Spoil the punchline, but what's your tip?
I'm going to try and retrace the first person that told me, and I feel like it was Gary, Everyday Dad. We were talking about it. And he had just mentioned in passing, I was like, what because he said his processing was so fast. I'm like, what are you using? I don't think he kind of realized what was happening. He might've, but it was like, try using Apple devices 4K. So when you get it to that export option in the share sheet, it's Apple devices and there's like Apple devices 4K, right? So I tested it, and to be honest, you probably experienced it now too. Every single time, it actually is faster than the processing bar can even tell you. It'll say like 95% process. You click the link in your YouTube studio and you can see that it's already 4K.
It is so weird that it works. Like I don't understand.
It is weird. Yeah, it's strange. I don't understand it either.
It does not make any sense. And it does feel like Final Cut actually tweaked their typical H.264 export, because this is what I was usually doing, and I think most people do, because it gives you the highest quality file. Is you go to, in the same list of like all the Apple ProRes 422 options in there, there's like H.264, no options. There's no flexibility. It's just like H.264 makes a pretty big chunky file, but that's kind of good for archiving. It means you've got something there if you want to work with it again in the future. So that's still what I'll like deliver to clients, and sometimes a ProRes version as well. But when you go to YouTube, like the Apple devices one is just insanely fast. So as you can tell, I've left a few things out of the editing process. So there is a playlist of my whole Final Cut workflow that's going to complete the story for you. So click on that, watch that next, and you'll understand everything there is to know about how I make a YouTube video. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.